So everyone, hello. So we're now doing the D-Day video, and I've got some gameplay in the background, but of D-Day itself. But I'm not a D-Day expert, and so I've left a link in the description for everyone who's an expert and all the actual people who took part in D-Day. I also haven't got any family stories, really. Because while my great-granddad Frank was in the artillery, his division didn't go over on D-Day. Him and the 25-pounder guns, they went over... Well, the reconnoitre party went over on the 7th, and the guns went over on the 9th. As we can see here, there's some photos of them. You know, war's not entirely a shooting gallery. But I want to talk a bit about Battlefield 1942's thematic depiction of Omaha Beach. After all, you know, Omaha gets a lot of attention, be it due to the fighting, it being the most intense fighting, and even other beaches such as Gold and Sword, where the British landed, or the Canadians at Juneau, or even the other American beach at Utah don't get as much attention. But hope you don't mind, I'm also going to put up some pictures showing some of the things from the actual D-Day, just to give you a compare and contrast. Because I noticed there's a kind of cleanliness about Battlefield 1942's depiction of Omaha Beach. You know, it's a bit less messy. There aren't so many people about, you know, about the landscape's easily navigable. The shells, as we just saw, land, but if there are no units nearby, no one seems that affected. And of course, it's somewhat of a shooting gallery, whereas there's a more human side to it, and you know, some of the improvised fortresses, it's all somewhat clean in certain ways. Because I mean, war isn't fun and games. If it were, the sacrifice probably wouldn't be worth remembering, but it isn't, and yeah, as you can see. Corpses of the people, they sort of fold over with the kits all sort of neatly assembled. Not even the way Battlefield Vietnam does it, where they have the sort of helmet or hat staked into the ground. And whereas, of course, you know, the wars were a bit less complicated than that, a bit more complicated in more ways, but we don't see some of that here. We don't always perhaps like to think of that sort of way, but of its more complicated aspects, the more tough side to it. As I say, with the corpses that would stay, those kind of things that I don't know how much of these great-granddad Frank would have seen as he got off the ships. We're still piecing together his story after he came over. Seems he possibly didn't want his wife to know that he'd been so close to combat. But so we get this kind of cleanliness to it, and you know, as we see by even the German flag, the, as it were, cleanliness of even the ideals that the Axis perhaps fought for. But there's also something I think it does right. From what I've read of the sources and everything. More the sort of the anonymity of the war, all the individual stories that get left out, and one of the things historians have been looking towards over the years is the way that individual stories might get left out, because in what's called the sort of global or familiar situation of how do we contextualise the great moments of history like D-Day, in perhaps looking at the sort of economic or ideological trends, or the individual stories, or is the personal experiences, material culture, what the soldiers ate, what magazines they read, what games they played, all these kind of things, all the sort of things that made them less the sort of, and of course where they lived, what they operated, the military aspects of those, but also their traditions, their beliefs, their values, what they'd have held dear and what not. But and of course the civilian aspect. I mean, we don't see that in Battlefield 42, but the way some of these great events can really anonymise people is why we remember them, which is why we need to remember people. But of course, now the guns have fallen silent. It's a memory for some. And for others, it just has to be recreated. And I just want to say to everyone who served on D-Day and everyone who did their bit, it was lovely having you here.